Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Archana Kaushik from Department of Social Work, University of Delhi. Today we are going to learn about community engagement in conflict resolution from the paper Human Resource Development through Community Engagement. After completing this module, the students will be able to understand different levels of community engagement, identify the process and steps in community engagement, examine the roles and tasks of community worker in each step of community engagement. Conflict in society is as old as the society itself. It is actual or perceived disagreement over some issue. It exists whenever incompatible activities occur. It has the potential to assume bigger proportions. It may be defined as a social situation in which two individuals strive to acquire a set of resources at the same period. It could be at any level: social, religious, regional, national or international. Conflicts have certain characteristics. They are present as potential or actual manifestation in almost all relationships. One may find conflict between couples, friends, within families, among different families, neighborhoods, among various social, cultural, economic and religious groups, within and among communities and even among nations. Differences in attitudes and perceptions, values and goals, interests and desires, and levels of tolerance are the apparent reasons for conflicts. Outcomes of conflicts are diverse. They may lead to coldness in relationships or may erupt in violence. They may be of a short period or lifelong, but not always destructive. The word conflict invariably carries negative connotation. It is considered as opposite to cooperation and peace and is generally linked to disruption and violence. However, conflict can trigger positive social change and may set stage for a new social political life in a community. Conflict resolution. Cost of conflict financially, socially and psychologically can be devastating for a community, which may derail its progress and development. Conflict resolution without violence thus is a sign of heightened civilization and the need of the hour. Society has developed means to prevent and control conflicts and clashes. In families, eldest members in the community, heads or kings, took over power to resolve conflicts and disputes. In democratic societies, formal set of rules, legislations, police system, judiciary are the prominent organs of preventing and resolving conflicts. Conflict resolution includes the methods and processes involved in facilitating the peaceful ending of conflict and retribution. It may be defined as a situation where the conflict parties enter into an agreement that solve their incompatibilities, disputes, problems and cease all violent actions against each other. It encompasses non-violent measures with the aim to promote effective solution. Negotiation, mediation, arbitration, diplomacy are some of the important strategies of conflict resolution. Community-based ways and levels of conflict resolution. There are two broad approaches to solve disputes: violent and peaceful. Violence is increasingly becoming non-feasible and non-practical and counterproductive strategy and self-destructive, especially in the nuclear age. As civilization spreads and rational approach expands, violence gives way to debate and discussion, bargain and sharing, peaceful coexistence and healthy competition. In the present world, more and more peaceful methods are being explored and employed to reduce conflict. Conflict resolution levels. Intra-community conflicts. These conflicts happen between and among two and more inhabitants of the community. Certain examples of this category of conflicts are dispute over land and resources ownership, incongruent relationships between families and neighborhood due to ego clashes, lack of cooperation arising due to jealousy related to wealth disparities, etc. Here, relationships between disputed parties are informal. Next is inter-community conflict. These conflicts are between social groups of the community with formal service providers like local government or civil society bodies. For instance, exclusion of certain group, say Dalits, of a community from provision of benefits of developmental schemes may result in conflicts. Next is micro-macro conflicts. When disputes occur between macro level changes in policies, international conventions and treaties resulting in deprivation, poverty and marginalization of certain vulnerable groups in the community. For example, liberal economic policies may impact small scale and domestic industries like handloom workers, resulting in loss of livelihood options and accentuated poverty conditions. Approaches to conflict resolution. There are 5 main approaches to conflict resolution. These are force, withdrawal, accommodation, compromise, consensus. In this slide, we see that based on the importance of achieving goals, conflict resolution strategies can be categorized into 2, withdrawal and force. Force has higher level of importance of achieving goals. Likewise, when we have importance of relationships, then accommodation is on the top and withdrawal is least. Compromise is the middle strategy. Approaches to conflict resolution. Force. In this approach, power dynamics play central role. Here, one party may use coercive strategies such as threat to physical violence or actual violence, threat to withdrawal, exerting economic or social dominance, etc. Inclination to win regardless of whether the other party loses or whether or not the process of winning causes damage to personal relationships is the inherent aspect. It rests on skewed power relation between the two parties. Approaches to conflict resolution. Withdrawal. In this approach, either of the parties want to avoid confrontation even if that process goal remains unachieved. Certain common withdrawal strategies are avoidance of volatile locations by service providing agency, stakeholders opting out of project or a negotiation process, withdrawal of funding, deployment of delaying tactics, postponing project decisions, temporary boycotts and strikes, or withdrawal of labor. Approaches to conflict resolution. Accommodation. Here, one of both parties in conflict show higher importance to relationship and have intention to continue a strong bond with the other party even at the cost of losing goals. In these cases, a party may choose to accommodate the other party's goals, conceding to all or most of their demands. For instance, an NGO may give in to the demands for additional services even if it is financially draining in order to maintain goodwill in the community or to prevent project from collapsing. Approaches to conflict resolution. Compromise. This approach is based on the minimum win-loss outcome. It tends to strike a middle path between intentions to goal achievement as well as maintaining relationships. Here, a party may have to bargain by foregoing something important in order to get another aspect that is crucial for attaining goals. Approaches to conflict resolution. Consensus. This approach seeks to achieve win-win situation by negotiating over immediate demands and hostile positions of the other party, or by considering the widest possible and most creative range of options for meeting the party's underlying needs. Parties give importance to both goal achievement as well as relationships. Strategies of conflict resolution. There are varied ways of perceiving and resolving conflicts. 3 frequently used strategies in conflict resolution are negotiation, mediation, adjudication. Negotiation. It is a process of talks between or among conflict stricken parties in which the substance of the dispute is identified and clearly spelled out, and then attempts have to be made to sort out the differences between them. Reasoning or logical argument paves way for an amicable settlement of dispute. Mutual trust is established and parties weigh options, do cost benefit analysis, and then mutual give and take is arranged. When negotiation is attempted in a formal political and diplomatic context, an open statement of settlement is announced. Mediation. When the level of dispute between two parties is to the extent that they are not ready to talk and negotiate, a third party may intervene and gradually build a positive environment to negotiate by bringing both parties together so that they may begin to talk. It is facilitation process through which negotiations are given a fillip and a solution is made possible. It is a form of third party assistance which involves an outsider to the dispute who, however, lacks power to make decisions for the parties. Mediation is a non-coercive, non-violent and ultimately non-binding form of intervention. Adjudication. In certain conflict situations where mediation and negotiation do not work, peace through justice or adjudication is an appropriate strategy. It is the judicial settlement of dispute resolution. The law of the land, constitutional measures, international conventions related to human rights form the basis of this strategy. Alternative dispute resolution. One of the primary methods of conflict resolution is judicial pronouncement. The workload of judiciary has increased enormously, resulting in undue delays in dispensation of justice. With exorbitant fees of lawyers, it is financially draining too. Alternative forms called alternative dispute resolution mechanisms or ADRM are used. Establishment of Lok Adalats or people's courts is one such mechanism. Lok Adalats, presided over by a sitting or retired judge along with a social worker and a lawyer. Lok Adalats on demand, regular courts transferred cases to them, which are free of charge. Lawyers' assistance is not mandatory. A flexible and liberal approach is adopted over rigid and strict adherence to legal procedures and rules. Settlements, compromise and judgments are legally binding. Adopting appropriate strategies of conflict resolution. Let us look at these strategies. Each of the conflict resolution strategy has its own set of advantages and disadvantages, and therefore depending upon the nature of conflict, probable impact of it, profile of parties involved and such other factors should be kept in mind while deciding on the usage of effective approach and strategy. Points to ponder while selecting appropriate conflict resolution strategy. It may happen that with the passage of time, parties lose or divert their interest and disputes and tensions often die down when situations are not fueled up. Thus, one may ponder upon whether doing nothing is likely to result in conflict resolution on its own without violence. The time and resources available to the parties involved in conflict or interest that are at stake are crucial factors in selecting conflict resolution strategy. Points to ponder while selecting appropriate conflict resolution strategy. Another factor is the extent to which structural inequalities and related aspects are likely to magnify or hamper conflict resolution. When basic rights of a particular social group, say Dalits, are being violated, then providing justice should be the salient point of consideration in conflict resolution. The power and interest of the parties and their perception on importance of goal achievement influences selection of strategies of conflict resolution. The effectiveness of the existing socio-cultural and legal norms customs and rules in the community with regard to conflict and its resolution play a crucial role in the selection of a particular strategy of conflict resolution. Indian society has been traditionally conformity oriented, and hence avoidance of conflict, withdrawal have been the approaches usually adopted by those on the lower social order. The consequences of continuation of conflict resolution, such as susceptibility of riots and violence, may hamper choice of strategies of conflict resolution. The level of importance of building or maintaining good relationships felt by the involved parties determines choice of strategy, as we have seen in the text above. Nonetheless, efforts should be made towards assessing the feasibility of consensus building approaches, followed by picking up next best strategy option as negotiation, mediation and adjudication. Community engagement in conflict resolution. The adopted version of the model by Thania, Fenzold and Christoph Spung is used. Basic assumption is that the initiative of conflict resolution is taken by a civil society organization, say an NGO, working in the community for some time. The process of community-based conflict resolution begins with the analysis of the conflict resolution. Comprehensive analysis of conflict resolution is done that leads to entire process by way of exploring the root cause of dispute and pros and cons of various approaches and strategies of conflict resolution. The schematic representation of the model has been given here. CSO based conflict analysis. The mapping of existing or potential conflicts by the agency is done within the office. The mapping helps in appraising causes and levels of conflict after careful analysis of the first-hand information collected with minimum intrusion into the conflict situation. The initial analysis is composed of problem tree analysis, which is to understand the root causes of conflicts, precipitating factors and their triggering effects. Stakeholder analysis to gauge who may add fuel to conflict situation and make it worse, and who in the community may mediate, negotiate or restore harmony and peace. Also, it would note the neutral stakeholders. Risk analysis, comprehending which moves can put the stakeholders or parties involved into risk, and also examining which stakeholders are more at risk and in which manner. Participatory conflict analysis. This analysis is done with the community people and it helps in developing credibility and trust among the community people. The process is participatory and based on engaging community stakeholders in dialogue. This also helps in understanding and analyzing the needs and fears of various stakeholders in the community who may be directly or indirectly linked to conflict resolution. Further, it aids in developing insight on suitable approaches and strategies of conflict resolution. Conflict resolution plan. The conflict management plan describes the overall strategy of managing the conflict. It includes the proposed process of consensus building and an initial set of conflict mitigation or prevention options. Oftentimes, an initial conflict resolution plan is prepared at the end of the CSO based conflict analysis and is revised after the process of participatory conflict analysis. The components of a conflict resolution plan are the most predictable conflict resolution strategy or strategies, a description of the proposed process of participatory conflict analysis, a description of the capacity building measures, communication skills, leadership training, awareness raising about various conflict mitigation strategies and options, etc. required to implement the process of consensus building or to action conflict mitigation or prevention options, and the conflict mitigation or prevention options proposed. Capacity building. Capacity building is an integral aspect of conflict resolution plan that aims to develop a level playing field so that less powerful stakeholders can participate equitably in the process of consensus negotiation. Increasingly, in the future, communities need to be prepared to handle conflicts, as more and more regions are likely to be marked as conflict prone areas. Capacity building may cover training in negotiation, facilitation, and mediation for both agency staff and the inhabitants of the community, as well as other stakeholders. Implementation. The conflict resolution plan is executed, and in the process the community builds its capacity and confidence to maintain its cooperative interactions, shared and harmonious living, to prevent eruptions of disputes, and also to resolve conflicts in an amicable manner. It is followed by evaluation of the entire interventions where lessons learnt are highlighted. Gandhian way. Gandhian way provides the uncontested ideal framework in the arena of world peace initiatives. According to Gandhiji, sustainable peace in the world is possible only through adherence of non-violent methods. Rational discussion and persuasion are the best ways to resolve disputed issues, for which he propagated methods of satyagraha. In satyagraha, satya means truth and agraha means firm gripping. It means firmness for the cause of truth. Gandhiji used this technique for mass mobilization for political movements against the injustice of a government or power elite. Satyagraha is taken as a moral weapon to fight untruth and violence with truth and non-violence. It is the Gandhian technique of non-violent activism. The beauty of Satyagraha is that it does not touch the body of the opponent. Satyagraha is not application of physical force or brutal force, but using soul force or moral power. He demonstrated usage of these methods in resolving varied conflicts, both in India during freedom struggle and South Africa. As a technique of social action, Satyagraha may be applied to resolve the following types of social conflicts. 1. Conflict between one individual and another individual. 2. Conflict between an individual and a group. 3. Conflict between a group and another group or between two classes. 4. Conflict between a section of community and the state. 5. Conflict between one nation and another nation. Galtung notes usage of Satyagraha as a conflict resolution strategy in the following ways. 1. In conflict resolution, it is necessary to understand opponent's goals and try to use it as an opportunity to transform society and transform the self. 2. In conflict struggle, one should act non-violently, like do not harm or hurt with the words, deeds or thought. Do not damage property. Do good even to the evildoer. 3rd, conflicts should be resolved. Always seek negotiation and seek transformation of both the self and opponent. Cooperation and harmony constitute the fundamental laws of universe rather than conflict and struggle. Gandhi does not regard a conflict as an antagonism between two, but a product of faulty system, and therefore efforts should be made to change the system so that there should be no possibility of eruption of conflicts. Along with Satyagraha, constructive programs of Gandhi is also an active method of attacking and removing social evils and peace building. Conflict resolution education and peace education. Worldwide, at various forums, conflict resolution education and peace education programs have been initiated. They aim at developing an understanding of the nature of conflict, what conflict is and how it develops, as well as what one can do to manage it. Participants learn about the occurrence of conflicts and develop insight into the variety of ways to respond to and manage conflicts. Peace education program. Likewise, Peace education programs help people develop communication skills, active listening, empathy, cultural sensitivity, problem solving skills of brainstorming or consensus building, etc. Moreover, peace education builds positive attitude about justice, respect and democracy. It emphasizes understanding the dynamics of social conflict, warfare and conflict resolution and the dynamics of peace. Let us summarize today's discussion. Conflicts are natural and universal. However, if unresolved, they may be expressed in the forms of abuse, violence, disruptions and wars. Worldwide, efforts have been made for amicable settlements of conflict. Under the gamut of conflict resolution, there are varied range of approaches and strategies. In this module, 5 salient approaches have been delineated: accommodation, withdrawal, consensus, force and compromise, based on varying degree of importance attached to relationships or with that the party and goals to be achieved. Negotiation, mediation and adjudication are the 3 main strategies of conflict resolution discussed in the module. Gandhian way of conflict resolution is considered ideal for resolving disputes in a non-violent manner. Framework for community engagement in conflict resolution is mentioned. Lastly, brief descriptions of scope and contents of conflict resolution education and peace resolution education are provided. Thank you.